V'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei
Torah.
To be involved, engaged in the study of Torah. So this week, I wanted to spend some time with the Torah portion and the Haftorah portion, because this week is Shabbat Shuvah. Tomorrow is tonight and tomorrow is Shabbat Shuvah. Shabbat Shuvah is the Shabbat of return. The word Shuvah, you can hear Teshuvah, which is repentance and return, Shuvah. And it's based on the Haftorah that we're going to read from Hosea, when he says to Israel, return to God, and God will forgive you. Shabbat Shuvah is always the Shabbat between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It's a very special Shabbat. And I just read something hilarious that you'll enjoy. Apparently, in the old days, the rabbis only gave sermons twice a year. Shabbat Shuvah and Shabbat Hagadol, which is the Shabbat during Passover, during Pesach. Those are the only times they gave sermons. The rest of the time they didn't. So modern rabbis expanded that to every single week. But that used to be when people really look forward to hearing the rabbis. Maybe they just did teachings. I can't imagine they didn't talk. But the big sermons were on those days, which I thought was interesting. So we're at this very interesting Parsha. I'm going to share the text with everyone in a second, called Vayeilech, which is Deuteronomy 31, and it's only one chapter. The whole Parsha is one short chapter, but it's very powerful because it's when Moses is basically told by God, okay, you're going to die, get ready, prepare yourself. And so I'm going to put the Parsha on the, okay, where is it? Vayeilech. And I'm going to share it with you. Okay, so where's everybody? All right, you're over here. Let me make sure I can see everyone. Yeah, hold on. How do I do this? No. Hannah, how do I do this?
What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to get everyone to see everyone on my screen.
Oh,
here,
you
I'm doing it. You have to drag down. Okay, I think that's everyone. Anybody else? No, I think that's everyone. Okay, so first of all, the very first sentence is Vayeilech comes from, it's interesting. The word lech means go, and I'm sure Penina knows this. What's the name of the Parsha where God tells Abraham to go to the land? Penina, what's that called? You're muted.
Is it Lech Lecha?
Yeah.
No, it says Vayeilech.
No,
on the top. Parshat Vayeilech.
I know that, but what I'm saying is the one in the book of
Breshit. It's called
Lech Lecha. It's take yourself.
I don't see the Hebrew in front of me, so I don't
That's
know.
okay. No, I'm saying the one with Avraham is Lech Lecha.
Lech Lecha.
Yeah, and this one is Vayeilech, and he went. So it's interesting. The commentaries say, it says, then Moses went out and spoke these things to all Israel. So one of the commentaries says, Vayeilech, where did he go? I mean, wasn't he living with them? Where did he go to? And I think it's, one of the sages, I can't remember which one, said he literally went out to every tribe, to every encampment, and personally talked to them to reassure them, because he was going to die and he wanted them not to be afraid and not to be worried. So he cared so much about the people, even at the end of his life in the last few days, that he went to each, tribe and maybe smaller group, different encampments, and personally was saying goodbye and saying, do not fear that, God is still going to be with you. Penina, did you want to say something?
It shows continuity, Vayeilech.
Yes, it shows continuity.
And he went. It means that it shows, it was like a continued.
Exactly. He was continuing the way he'd been from the very beginning with these people.
Exactly.
And down to Egypt and whatever. Okay, so now we're on what he says to them. So who would like to read the English? Who would like to read?
I can read.
Okay.
Then Moses went out and spoke these things to all Israel. He said to them, I am now 120 years old, and I am no longer able to lead you. The Lord has said to me, you shall not cross the Jordan.
Okay, let's stop. First of all, there's a blessing that people say traditionally. I'm sure most of you know it. May you live to be 120. And this is where it comes from, right here. May you live to be 120 is based on this idea that Moses lived to be 120. Okay. But he says, I am no longer able to lead you. Is that true? Or is it God? I mean, am I longer capable to lead you? I'm not able to lead you, but it's really not that. What is it? It's not my choice.
It's God's choice.
It's God's choice. God has said to me, you're not going. So I can't do it. I'm not able is really not a perfect translation because it's really not, he's not able. He's not allowed. He's not being given the opportunity to lead you, and you shall not cross the Jordan. Okay.
So, Susan, maybe it's both.
Yes.
He's 120. It comes right after I'm 120 years old.
Right.
And there's an ability in there too. They have to do some fighting, some heavy duty. And true, he stands on the mountains and has his arms held up by Joshua, and but he's also not able.
He's not able. Okay, I want to read this whole paragraph and then we'll talk about it. Keep going, Susan.
Lord your God himself will cross over ahead of you. He will destroy these nations before you, and you will take possession of their land. Joshua also will cross over ahead of you, as the Lord said. And the Lord will do to them what he did to Sihon and Og, the kings of the Amorites, whom he destroyed along with their land. The Lord will deliver them to you, and you must do to them all that I have commanded you. Be strong and resolute. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you.
Okay, so first of all, just this idea of be strong and resolute, that is one translation. Another one, that's the Jewish, JPS translation, but it also could be strong and courageous. Have courage, because these Israelites are not the most courageous people. They're always nervous. They're always afraid. So here Moses is at the end of his life. Let's just talk a minute about what emotions he must be feeling and what he is saying to them with this emotional experience going on inside him. So how do you think he feels emotionally about this? What would you think?
He's ready to die. He knows he's going to die. He can't be a leader anymore. I got to think it's really sad about that, but he's encouraging them to carry on. In fact, that be strong and resolute, or be strong and courageous, I think was a slogan, if I remember correctly, of Menachem Begin, have courage, and other Israelis when they were fighting. I mean, it's a good slogan, but he's got to be really emotionally drained and sorry.
Do you agree? Okay. Do you agree that he's like ready to die and ready to give over his life's work?
Not necessarily, but that was decreed, and he knows he has to accept it.
Okay, all right. So I would like to, what do you think other people about how would we feel, or how does someone feel when you're told you only have a month to live, or you only have a very short time to live, get your affairs in order? What do you think? Because that's what he's doing. He's getting his affairs in order. How do you think he was feeling? What emotions might he be going through based on what we might think we would be going through? I don't think I'd be so, resigned. I think I'd have a lot of mixed emotions. Panina.
I think that he knows what they are going into. And the fact that he told them about the other nations, we have to remember that there are the rest of the tribes who never went down to Egypt are there. So one of the sentences he told them, go inherit the land. It means that it was already theirs.
Right.
And now he's walking into a country that he never been. He never been to Israel, the ones that they are going to get into, ever, never.
Right.
He was born in Egypt, was brought up in Egypt. And so I think he's tired, but also he might be knowing his limitations.
Might be knowing his limitations. Okay, any other opinions on any other emotions he might be having? Personally, go ahead. Who was going to speak?
I think I would just real quickly, I think that's a good point that Tina just made, that he sort of knows his limitations. They've been in the desert 40 years, multiple generations have kind of come and gone. It's really this fresh beginning as they go to this new home, and it just may not be his place. And this is a pretty smart guy, Moses. He probably figured that out.
So he's saying, okay, my work is done. I'm okay with it. Brad.
Well, I'm not seeing this so positively. If it were me, I'd be angry.
That's right.
Angry about what, Brad?
I'd be angry that after all that I'd done, after the sacrifices that I've made for this this people that has been so difficult to deal with over all these years, that I don't get to cross over. So I'd be pissed.
Be pissed. Okay, Natalie.
Well, I agree 100% with Brad. I pretty much was going to say that, but even if someone else is going to be in charge, why didn't God allow, Moses just to come with the rest of them? I think because he was not supposed to be like God to the people. That's why God prevented him from going in. He was with them, and he was like a God in many ways to them because he was their leader. We always really love our teachers. We respect our rabbis, anybody who is higher than we and taking care of us. And I think God doesn't allow him to go because he doesn't want him to be in conflict with him.
Well, we know that there's this reason that I find really hard to accept, that, he hit the rock instead of speaking to the rock, and God said, okay, now you're not going, but which we could argue about. But I also think I want to suggest also, the fact that he went around to if you take the midrash or the interpretation that he went from group to group, I think he was kind of tearful and giving everybody hugs. I don't know, really hugs, but shaking their hands, saying goodbye. I'm not going with you, and don't be afraid. And he's still their leader till the very end. But I see emotion in this, not just anger, but sadness. That he is not going to experience this after all this time. I'm an old man, but you spent all these years with them. So he's relinquishing it. And then he says to them, this seems to be his motto or his teaching right now: be strong and resolute, or be strong and courageous. Be strong, because let's move on and see what he says to Joshua, who is his second in command, who he's also pretty close to. So who would like to read, starting at verse 7? Somebody.
I'll read. Okay.
Okay.
Then Moses summoned Joshua and said to him in the presence of all Israel, be strong and resolute, for you must go with the people into the land that the Lord swore to their ancestors to give them, and you must divide it among them as their inheritance. The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged.
Okay, so why do you think he says that to Joshua, his his successor. Why does he say that to him, do you think? He says, be brave, be strong, don't be afraid, and don't be discouraged. Merle.
I keep feeling like he's conflicted with the fact that he can't go. And now he's got to tell everything to the people and to Joshua. I don't think he's really letting go. And I think that now he's telling Joshua, and it's like, okay, I'm telling you this because I maybe know more than you, and you haven't seen all sides of it that I have.
Okay.
I'm guessing.
What
but
has
that's what I
he
feel
seen?
like.
What has he seen that he's telling Joshua? I feel like he's
Well, the conflict amongst the people and each tribe and how everything that's gone on. And I think his conflict is that I don't get to go with him, and now I have to give somebody else instructions.
right. But okay, yes, Brad.
I think he's projecting onto Joshua the same problems that he's had all these years.
I
Right.
think you're right. It's like parents talk to a pregnant, mother, and they say, okay, yeah, it's great, but
I hear it.
there's a lot you're going to have to be prepared for. I think you're right. He was afraid. He was discouraged. Moses, I think you're right, Brad. And he's saying to Joshua, you're going to need strength and courage to deal with these people. They are not easy. So he's telling him that. And I agree with you. So he talks to the people, and the fact that, okay, Phyllis or Warren, did you want to say something?
I was going to say that Joshua has to be really nervous. Moses has been in charge for so long, and now all of a sudden he's accepting the mantle. When they're going into unknown territory, they have no idea what they're going to be facing. And he would have to be incredibly scared and nervous.
I would add that just the advice of not being afraid might even make you afraid at this point, knowing what Moses has been through.
Well, yeah, and he's been there, and he was one of the 12 spies, don't forget, 40 years before. He's not so young himself. They don't say his age, but he was, one of the original spies. He was one of the ones who came back and said it's a good land when the other 10 others said something else. So now I find this interesting. Oh, Pnina, go ahead.
Okay. I think that Moses actually was a spiritual leader, and he knew it. He came from a tribe of Levi, which later on became the Kohanim and the Leviim.
Right.
I think he did his job regarding the rules and the beliefs. And I think when it came to actual battles, Joshua was more fit, and he recognized it, because even in Egypt, when there was this, somebody intended to kill him because he killed the Egyptian guard, Moses ran away.
You're right. Good point. He's not a fighter. He's not a warrior.
Right. He ran away.
Not a warrior.
So he's a spiritual leader. He feels that he already taught them as much as he could regarding the belief in God, the strength of God, the unity that it brought them, this whole idea, made them into a nation. And now it's time for somebody who is a fighter.
A
knows how to fight.
fighter.
This is it.
That's a very good observation. So as we go on, I put the word Torah here. The translation is teaching, but in Hebrew it says Torah. And I think when we hear Moses wrote down this Torah, we get a different feeling than this teaching. So I put down the Hebrew, this Torah. And so this is interesting. He wrote it now. It's unclear, but he wrote down everything, so when we say Moses got the Torah at Sinai or whatever, it looks like he's writing down this Torah now, though we know in truth it wasn't written down historically and completely until like the 4th century BCE was when it was canonized or put together as we know it now. The rabbis finally assembled it. There were these different scrolls of different parts of it, and really only the priests and the kings and the elite had access. And it wasn't until the 400s when Ezra who may have been the one who put together the original first draft of it, read it to all the people, that they really got to hear it for the first time, according to what's in the text. But here, Moses again, yes, Brad.
Well, I had a question about that. I mean, when the Bible was canonized into
Yes.
the three divisions, the Torah and then the Nevi'im and the Ketuvim,
Right.
why was the book of Joshua not included in the Torah? It seems like a natural thing that you would end with when they finally get to Israel, when they finally get to the promised land. That seems like the more natural spot to cut the Torah off.
I think you're right. Different parts were written at different times, and perhaps it was in honor of Moses, because the last line of the Torah is, never again among the people of Israel was there a prophet like Moses, who spoke face to face with God. That's basically like the last line. And that, by the way, that's on our wall in our sanctuary down at Blazer. On one side, it's the Bereshit, the first paragraph and our sentence, and on the other side is the last. So maybe it was to honor Moses. And you know, it's called the 5 books of Moses, right? So maybe it's because, but it's a good point. And you know, if you look at where they, you'll see here, they chop up this Parsha where God says, I'm going to give you a poem to teach the people. And then it says, and here's the poem. And that's the end of the chapter. And the next chapter is the new, why didn't they put it together? So it's a good question, and probably a scholar of canonization would have some theories, but I don't know, to be honest. But I think it's a very good question. So let's go on with Moses wrote down this Torah. So Merle, why don't you read?
I don't know that I can. Okay, so Moses wrote down this Torah teaching and gave it to the Levitical priests who carried the Ark of Covenant of the Lord, and to all the elders of Israel. Then Moses commanded them at the end of every 7 years, in the year for canceling debts, during the festival of tabernacles, when all Israel comes to,
which is Shavuot, by the way. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. When all Israel comes to appear before the Lord your God at the place he will choose, you shall read this Torah before them in their hearing. Assemble the people.
Susan, excuse me, I think it's Sukkot, not Shavuot.
Tabernacles? You're
Tabernacle.
right. Pentecost is Pentecost. Tabernacles is Sukkot. Excuse me. You're absolutely
You ladies are so smart. Oh, I'm just going to listen.
okay.
I don't know that I can get to the other side without, I don't know how to get rid of
I'm
the
going to move
picture.
this thing in a minute.
Okay, then Moses wait a
I
minute.
want to stop you for a minute. So I have talked about this before. This book, Deuteronomy, was found 300, 400 years, let's see, 800, so 250 years after the other books were already written. And it was found in the temple in like 620 BCE during the reign of King Josiah. He had ordered a renovation of the temple, and suddenly the priests come in and they say, we found a 5th book. Oh my goodness, we found another book written by Moses that we didn't have before. And the scholars, all our biblical scholars, are not Orthodox, but you know, the biblical scholars say, no, this book was written then by some of the priests and prophets. Perhaps Jeremiah was one of the main authors of this. They wrote this at the time when things were horrible in the land. Nobody was following any rules. Nobody was observing any holidays. They were not reading anything. And if you look in the Book of Kings, I've talked about this a couple times, when they brought this book to King Josiah and he read it, he had like a nervous breakdown. He started tearing his clothes and going, oh my God, because you'll see all the warnings that are going to come. And he commanded that they renovate and, you know, change everything. Everybody had to start observing the Torah. So if you look here already, even though it was found in the temple, and it was written at the time when there was a temple. It says, when Israel will come to appear before the Lord your God in the place that he will choose. So they're trying to make it seem like this is, before the temple was built. They're referring to the temple, because when that's what you're supposed to do on Sukkot is go down to the temple and give sacrifices. So it's like written in a way to make it anachronistic, in other words, to make it seem like it was written a long time ago, even though it was written at the time that it was read.
Was that this chapter or all of Deuteronomy?
The whole book.
Okay.
Here's one. We're looking at this chapter, and you can see the reference to the 7 years when you cancel debts. That's the Shemitah. Every 7 years, your land is supposed to be fallow. You cancel debts. Everything takes the whole land and everything takes a break on the seventh year. And when they all come to the place he will choose, which everybody knows what he's talking about because they found this book in that place. And he says, continue, Merle, and then I'm going to make it easier for you to look
Assemble the people, men, women, and children, and the foreigners residing in your town. So.
Okay, hold on. Can you see it now?
I need the rest of the pair. Okay. Can you move it over though? Because I can't see the whole.
It's on the next page, isn't it?
Yeah, but all of our pictures are on that next page. They can listen.
Oh.
They can listen and learn to fear the Lord your God, and I can't get past.
Oh, I moved you. Okay. And follow carefully all the words of the Torah. The children who had not had the experience must hear it and learn to revere the Lord your God as long as they live in the land you are crossing the Jordan to possess. And you should know that after the king Josiah read this, he commanded the Torah to be read, or this book for sure to be read to all the people. That's in the Book of Kings, in the prophet section. That was the first thing he did, is he assembled everyone, went, oh my God, because he just read this, and then it goes on. Okay, so now God speaks to Moses. So who would like to read that? Can you all see the page? Is the
Yes,
page?
Julie.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Cindy, do you want to read?
No, I have blurry eyes from the chemo.
Okay.
I'll read.
Natalie. Okay.
I'll read, but I'm reading from my book. Okay, is that all right?
Yeah.
It's a little different.
That's okay.
The Lord said to Moses, "The time is drawing near for you to die. Call Joshua and present yourself in the tent of meeting, that I may instruct him." Moses and Joshua went and presented themselves in the tent of meeting. The Lord appeared in the tent in a pillar of cloud, the pillar of cloud having come to rest at the entrance of the tent. The Lord said to Moses, "You are soon to lie with your fathers. This people would thereupon go astray after the alien gods in their midst in the land that they are about to enter."
Okay, and the word in Hebrew is really prostitute or whore themselves. Oh. And now, if you're realizing that they're reading this, and this is a contemporary document to the time it was being read, this is what's going on right now in the land that they're reading it all for the first time. So do you follow? Everybody follow what I'm saying? It's like if we suddenly found a book written 200 years ago that said, there is going to be global warming in the land. The people are going to be politically tearing each other's throats out. There's going to be a plague in the land. And we're reading this. It was written 200 years ago, and it's about now. And that's what's happening to the people reading it in 620, because it was written in 620.
Who knew?
Oh my God, that's my birthday, June 20th, 620. I can't believe this.
Okay, so that's 620 BCE. They think it was written 200 or 300 years ago, or actually it was written 200 years ago, but it was said, we're believing like the biblical calendar in 1200, and this is the prophecy. And it's totally true. Okay, so go on, Natalie.
Okay, in the land they're about to enter, they will forsake me and break my covenant that I made with them. Then my anger will flare up against them, and I will abandon them and hide my countenance from them. They shall be ready prey, and many evils and troubles shall befall them. And they shall say on that day, surely it is because our God is not in our midst that these evils have befallen us. Yet I will keep my countenance hidden on that day because of all the evil they have done in turning to other gods.
Right.
Therefore,
yeah, 1 second. Yes, Brad.
To me, this is the most troubling passage
Really?
in all of Torah, because Deuteronomy ends with God hiding his face from us. And we have to ask ourselves, you know, their God was an immanent God. He was present. He was present as a cloud. He was present as, what was the other thing? Cloud.
The rain.
Yeah.
on the front of the temple.
Whatever.
But so their God was
Fire.
present, and our God, you have to keep asking yourself, in light of the Holocaust, in light of the fact that the age of miracles seemed to be gone, is our God still hiding his face from us?
That is great. And just remember that this was written as a warning, because if you look at the text of the Book of Kings, what the king does then is, it says after he read the book, he cleaned out the male prostitutes and prostitutes from the temple. He broke all the altars. I mean, people were really behaving badly. And it was like the prophets were at their wits' end. How are we going to get people back on the track? And it was by this fear, instilling fear in them. I want to say, and we have, a little while, in about 10 minutes, we're going to look at the Haftorah, which the rabbis chose. And the Haftorah is the exact opposite. It's about how much God loves us and will forgive us and be with us. So the rabbis agree with you. This is a very harsh parsha. And we have to say, well, that's just one side of the coin. Here's the other side of the coin, which we're going to look at in less than 10 minutes. So I agree with you. And I think that's why the rabbis chose this particular Haftorah that we're going to look at in a minute.
Thank God for this other side of the coin.
Yes, we will see it. Okay, so who wants to read verse 19? Because there's this poem that God wants to teach them. And who would like to read? Who is not?
I would love to read, please.
Oh, wait, is anybody else? How about Debbie?
Okay, Debbie. Go ahead.
Okay. Now write down this poem and teach it to the Israelites and put it in their mouths, so that it may be a witness for me against them. When I have brought them into the land flowing with milk and honey, the land I promised on oath to their fathers, and when they eat their fill and thrive, they will turn to other gods and worship them, rejecting me and breaking my covenant.
Which is what is going on at the time they're reading this. It's like, yeah, go ahead. Keep going.
And when many disasters and calamities come on them, this song will testify against them, because it will not be forgotten by their descendants. I know what they are disposed to do even before I bring them into the land I promised them on oath. So Moses wrote down this poem that day and taught it to the Israelites.
Keep going.
The Lord gave this command to Joshua, son of Nun. Be strong and resolute, for you will bring the Israelites into the land I promised them on oath, and I myself will be with you.
So this is saying not Joshua. And he did, when he came down in the cloud, if we look back at the text, it says, so I can instruct Joshua. So now Joshua and God are communicating. You know what I mean? So Joshua is now, really raised to that status where God speaks directly to Joshua. Moses is no longer the intermediary. And there's a midrash that says Moses said to Joshua, well, what did God say to you? And Joshua said, well, did you ever tell me what God said to you? telling you. And then Moses said, this is a midrash, better I should die than start to become jealous of Joshua. I realize I'm going to be jealous if
Wow.
I'm feeling, this is a midrash, this is one rabbi's interpretation.
Yeah, but it makes sense.
It does make sense.
It makes sense about Moses's conflict about dying, not be able to go, and giving everything up to Joshua.
Exactly. It's a complex feeling, you're going to die, you have to retire, you have to like give up your power, and you say, okay, it's time. I mean, that's logically, intellectually. Rabbi Magnin never retired. He was a rabbi at Wilshire Boulevard Temple for like 65 years or something. He started in 1915 and he retired, or I think when he died in 1980.
He retired when he died.
1982. He was a rabbi from 1915 to 1982. So he was never giving it up. And
wow.
Yeah, so it's complex. And just because your body may be tired, I don't think our minds are tired. I mean, if we're not suffering from something, some illness, and it's really hard. Okay, so now we have, after Moses finished writing this Torah from beginning to end. So here they're saying the whole Torah, including this book, people, that was written then, commands the Levites who carried the Ark of the Covenant, take this Sefer Torah and place it beside the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God. There it will remain as a witness against you. And so, yeah, this is where they found it.
Here.
Next to the Ark, which is in the Holy of Holies and somewhere in the temple. So again, they're setting it up that, you see, this was here all the time. For I know how rebellious and stiff-necked you are. And this is Moses now. But this is not the last chapter. But I know how rebellious and stiff-necked you are. If you've been rebellious against the Lord while I am still alive and with you, how much more will you rebel after I die? So he's saying you are gonna be, but this is
trouble.
But this is all, as we say, being spoken to the people reading it. Assemble before me all the elders of your tribes and all your officials, so I can speak these words in their hearing and call the heaven and earth to testify against them. And that's what the king did. He got the whole country together. For I know that after my death, you are sure to become utterly corrupt and to turn from the way I commanded you. In days to come, disaster will fall on you because you will do evil in the sight of the Lord and arouse his anger by what your hands have made. And this is the king, Josiah, Yeshayahu, he then, sort of ordered a national teshuvah because of this, in order to try to avert this prediction. And then, Brad, as I was saying, here's the last line of the chapter of the Parsha. And Moses recited the words of the song from beginning to end in the hearing of the whole assembly of Israel. So I was reading this and I said, well, where is it? And it's the whole next Parsha. Next week is the poem. So this is the setup. And now I want to look at the Haftorah because it's the exact opposite. And our sages and okay, now how do I do this share? What do I do? How do I do this? Hannah, I need your help. Where is share? Oh, stop share. Okay. And now share again. And it's this one. Okay, share. So this is this beautiful, very short Haftorah that we read tomorrow. And you'll notice it's not called Shabbat Vayeilech, which is the name of the Torah portion. It's called Shabbat Shuvah. So the emphasis is on this beautiful poem or prediction or comforting writing or poetry by Hosea, the prophet Hosea, in the Book of Writings. And this is also what we think about. It's between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And yeah, we have this roster of how we read the Torah, but we can choose the Haftorah that we feel people need. And so this is beautiful. So Brad, why don't you read it? Read some of it, because Maybe it'll make you feel better.
Return, O Israel, to the Lord your God, for you have fallen because of your sin. Take words with you and return to the Lord. Say to him, forgive all guilt and accept what is good. Instead of bulls, we will pay the offering of our lips.
Okay, so that means we're going to speak to you, God. We're not going to sacrifice bulls or animals.
Okay.
We are going to actually declare our guilt and forgiveness with our words. Go ahead.
Assyria shall not save us, no more will we ride on steeds.
So that means we're not going to look for political, salvation from one country. They say Assyria is one and riding on steeds refers to Egypt. Keep going.
Our handiwork, our God, since you alone orphans find pity.
Okay, and now this is the answer of God.
I will heal their affliction. Generously will I take them back in love, for my anger has turned away from them. I will be to Israel like dew. He shall blossom like the lily. He shall strike root like a tree of Lebanon. Wait, I gotta move that. His boughs shall spread out far. His beauty shall be like the olive tree. His fragrance like that of Lebanon.
This is all the Jews. This is Israel. This is how our forgiveness will be for us.
They who sit in his shade shall be revived. They shall bring to life new grain. They shall blossom like the vine. His scent shall be like the wine of Lebanon.
So this is a beautiful blessing to anyone who just says, God, forgive me. I'm making teshuvah. I'm sorry. I recognize what I did wrong. And this is so different from the Torah portion. So different from the condemnation and punitive, punitive actions. And also the imagery, if you notice, is imagery of the land. This is what the land of Israel is like. There are olive trees and Lebanon is nearby, and there's grain and there's vineyards and wine from Lebanon. This is like imagery of the good life in ancient Israel is what it is. Okay, who wants to, Miriam, can you read, Miriam?
Certainly. Okay, Ephraim shall say, is that where we are?
Yes, Ephraim meaning Israel, and it's Ephraim is a child, so it's like young Israel. I'm seeing it, Ephraim for Israel.
Yes. The son of Ephraim, the son of Joseph.
Exactly.
Shall say, what more have I to do with idols? When I respond and look to him, I become like
a virgin
cypress. Your fruit is provided by me.
And then this, I feel, is Hosea commenting now. He talked about what God would say, what Israel will say, and now here's the prophet who is giving us a little closing teaching. Go ahead, Miriam.
Who was wise will consider these words. Will take note of them. For the paths of the Lord are smooth, the righteous and walk, while sinners stumble
on that. So how do we feel about this text versus the Torah text? How do you feel about it? What do you think?
May I say that I am overwhelmed and touched by God's gracious love and mercy and compassion on all of us in Israel. And I was just listening to Golda Meir's speech when Israel became a nation. This is just so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have a reaction to this as the Haftorah? And this is the core of Shabbat Shuvah, is this text. Yes, Brad.
Well, I'm not there. I mean, in light of the Holocaust, it seems to me very difficult to deny that God has hidden his face from us.
I don't disagree. And the Holocaust is in its own category that we can't, even though there were some similar horrible genocides of Jews in the 16th century. There was one in Poland. And yes, I agree with you. There's no comfort. I just look at Holocaust survivors, and that's the people we need to talk to, who still believe in God, who are still believe in the future and family and goodness and whatever. We will have to look at them. But I agree with you. It's very hard. It's very hard to feel that God is watching over us. At the same time, before I talk, anybody else want to say anything about that or anything else?
Well, I think I agree with Brad here, where these paths, the smooth path is there to have this nice leisurely stroll, but there's sort of no that would give doesn't say like why or what you're going to get or why it's going to be a smooth path or how he's going to protect you. It's just like take it on blind faith and close your eyes and walk down this beautiful path. It's a little bit hard to grasp what the real benefits are going to be.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
Rabbi, I just want to help everybody with this.
No,
the love at the temple, the love that we have amongst one another.
Jonah, you gotta wait.
Okay,
and then
all right.
Okay.
Wait, you just muted yourself.
Oh yeah. Okay. I think he's using Ephraim and Menashe. Those are two children who were born in diaspora, and they were supposed to be a hope that things will work out and will be fruitful. Ephraim comes from the word pri. It's going to be a land that's going to give you fruit. Menashe is somebody who was out of his country, out of another place. So he's using those two to show that the hope is going to be actually materialized, because those children wind up as a part of the people that came now to the country. So I think to use the Holocaust is, even the CEO of Pfizer said, move on. And he's a son of Holocaust survivors. And he says, move on. You can't rely on the bad things to prevent you from causing and making good things happen or continue. Something is going on with Miriam's screen. It is making a lot of noise. And I cannot hear myself.
Okay. Nina, is that your interference?
No, not mine. It's Miriam's.
Oh, it's Miriam.
Oh, Miriam.
Yeah. Okay. Anyhow, so I think the whole idea is that they cannot look back. They have to look ahead. And according to the spies who came back and said, it's a land of milk and honey. He's trying to tell them, look, we all had experiences with galut, with being out of that land. And yet God is promising you that it's going to be fruitful and it's going to be good. Otherwise, why is he bringing Menashe and Ephraim?
Okay.
So,
okay.
We
only have like 6 minutes, so I want to get everybody in and then.
Yeah,
I
think it's hopeful, very hopeful.
Okay, Merle?
That's fine. I think it's hopeful, but I don't know when those masses are in such conflict, I don't know that a few people can make all those people hopeful, because you have no clue what's on the other side of the fence.
Who's in conflict? I didn't hear that.
I think that this whole group of people that are, crossing over, I don't know that you can make them feel so positive that everything is going to be glorious and beautiful and fruitful and everything else, when they have no clue what they're going to see or what they have to do to make their lives better than what they think they've had.
Wait a minute. What are you talking about?
Well, I'm looking at the poem, And I don't know how,
This is not the poem. This is not the poem. The poem is in the Torah.
What I'm saying with the Haftorah, where it's so positive, to me, it's like a poem, but it's so positive that I don't know that the people can accept such positiveness when they have no clue what they're going to see on the other side.
Wait. So Merle, you're conflicting. This was written at a totally different time. It's not in the same time at all.
Okay.
Separate. This is the book of Hosea. The other one is in the Torah. One's in the So there's nothing to do with it. This is just saying if you return to God because you have fallen,
got it,
sinned, and you speak to God from your heart, you will be forgiven and your life will be more blessed. Now, I totally hear what Brad is saying. And a lot of those people returned to God and it was not blessed and it was horrible, horrifying and whatever. And I'll almost have to feel like, in a weird way, this is metaphorical. It's like the devil took over the world and God was like imprisoned or something. I mean, metaphorically, there's no explanation for the evil and the rampant.
No, I agree.
All boundaries of evil there was. And so we can't even connect that. Yet even in the concentration camps, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning?
Viktor Frankl.
Viktor Frankl.
And you have a purpose when people were able to be kind to each other, even in those animalistic, horrible places, they were in some way elevated or found some way to make meaning of their life. Certainly in the normal scheme, if we admit our wrongdoings, ask for forgiveness, try to repair, our lives will be better with our children, with our friends, with our colleagues, with whatever. And the country right now is so fractured and so angry and so oppositional. So many people that they're just looking to catch you so they can yell at you or argue with you or whatever, that this can be a comforting idea. It's a very gentle idea that even if you don't think God's going to heal your affliction, you're going to heal your own affliction. Brad.
Well, another way of reading the Torah portion is dealing with immanence. The idea that while the Hebrews were wandering, God was present with them. He was there as a fire. He was there as smoke. He followed them every day as they wandered through the desert. And now God's telling us he's not going to be present for us the way he was for those people. That's not to say he's not there. He's just not immanent in the same way.
Well, Orthodox people and Christians would totally disagree with you because they feel God's presence every day in everything they do. I have a very devout Black Christian woman friend who basically feels God guides her everything she does every day. So it's, that's number one. But I want to also add that even though God was with them, they were horrible. He was killing them and giving them plagues half the time. I don't really believe all this is so literally true, but God's presence didn't make any difference to their behavior. They were just the worst, and so
I know Jewish people that are like that. I mean, they, people that are all in it for themselves and everyone else is wrong. I kind of feel like they feel like that God is speaking to them in that way, and the rest of us don't know what we're talking about.
No, but this woman, she is a holy woman. She only does good. She is convinced and she always strives for the highest level of goodness. And she believes it's not her, that she's a vessel, And then there are many Orthodox people who say Hashem is guiding. And,
Right.
the Hasidim say that God cares about everything. Even a blade of grass is not beneath God's concern. So it's kind of a choice, of how you want to live your life, how you want to let God in. Because the Rebbe of Kotzker said, where's God? Wherever you let him in. Wherever you want, where is God? Wherever you will let God in. So yes, Pamela.
And it's a choice.
Just a second, Pamela, yeah.
So, well, I had a thought, and I apologize, I haven't been able to be fully present today as I like to be. I'm wondering if the distinction that we make between sins against our fellow human beings, as opposed to sins against God and what we had before, if there isn't some relationship between, like, for example, the Holocaust is human against human, right? The Inquisition, human against human. And I'm wondering if that distinction might somehow be pertinent to this overall conundrum that we have as to, if we have this great and wonderful benevolent God, why do we have all these bad things happening to us? And so anyway, it's just a thought about that distinction that I thought might be, you could touch on a little bit.
Yeah, okay. Susan Ehrlich, did you want to say something? No.
What I could say, I mean, there's a perpetual conundrum. If God is all powerful, then how come he didn't stop the Holocaust? If God is benevolent, then if God is all knowing. I mean, these are irreconcilable views. And I like this consolation. I keep on thinking about Hosea. Hosea was commanded to marry a prostitute. I mean, is there something in there, Susan, that you think that might color this view? And a prostitute was faithful to him all the time. He had children, and God apparently did that to make Hosea know how people would stray, because there's a covenant in marriage, and there's a covenant, the same marriage between the people of Israel and God.
Right, but
Hosea, I mean, that seems totally irrelevant to now this thing of consolation, which is amazing that he is saying that God will be with you. And it's really people who are causing these problems.
Well, if we have free will and God says, here's a path of righteousness and goodness and love and peace, and we choose not to take it, is that our fault or is it God's fault? So there's the question: is if we're offered, health food and, junk food, and then later on we're sick, we get diabetes, heart disease, blah, 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 is that God's fault or our fault? I mean, it's like, so, I mean, that's, though one, and does God interfere? It doesn't seem so yet. Many people will say God does interfere and that they do feel God's presence and God did heal them or God did give them a revelation or whatever. So I have this theory as we close that some people have a talent for God, the way you have a musical talent or a physical talent or an athletic talent. Some people have a talent for spirituality, that they just are on a different level. I can't say that I'm always there. I mean, I know people so much more attuned with total faith, with no question, with understanding. That's a kind of a talent. But also I want to add as we close, spirituality is we call it a practice. It's a Jewish practice. It takes practice. Even the most talented musician doesn't just play beautifully out of the blue. They practice for hours.
Yes, yes.
Maestros, all these violinists and cellists and whatever, yo-yo. How many hours a day does he practice?
Amen, sister.
Practiced more spirituality
Mhm.
perhaps we would reach another level. That's how I leave you. Shabbat shalom.
Hello. Susan, can I say one thing before we end?
Yeah.
Yes. If some of you wish to stay another 10 minutes and open the book of Hosea, you will see that at the very beginning of this wonderful prophet, he says, this is where we get the expression, I will betroth you unto me forever. So therefore, I will betroth you in justice and mercy. And it's maybe, I don't remember, the second or third chapter of Hosea. I think it's worth reading that because it does say something very beautiful.
It does, but don't forget, for two people to become betrothed, they both have to say yes.
Amen.
Both have to say yes in order to become betrothed. So has to be a willing participation on both sides. If the groom asks and the bride says no, or vice versa, it's not going to work. So
there you go,
everyone.
Shabbat shalom. Thank
Shalom. Thank you.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you.
Shabbat
Thank you.
shalom. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
You sing, you pray twice.
Susan?